Three spine-chilling true tales of haunting terror discovered on a sinister rainy night alone. The wind howled like a wounded animal. Rain streaked down the windows like tears, and Lucy sat curled up on the couch with her young son, Ethan. The glow of the television flickered unnaturally, casting long shadows in their cozy living room. Three spine-chilling true tales of haunting terror discovered on a sinister rainy night alone. The news anchor read, but it was the chilling details involving mysterious disappearances that made Lucy's heart race. Her neighborhood, always so familiar, now felt like a fragile mask barely concealing unseen horrors. Lucy glanced towards the window, her thoughts tangled in worry. Outside, storm clouds swirled ominously. Her neighbors, usually so friendly, exchanged glances that seemed to hold secrets, whispers of discomfort wandering through the soaked streets. Just moments ago, she had felt safe, but now that feeling began to crumble, worry gnawing at her mind like a ravenous beast. Driven by her protective instincts, she moved to the front door, pants soaked from the rain. The trash bin had blown over, and she quickly secured it back in place. But as she stepped back inside, a shadow twitched across the distant street lamp. Something was out there tonight, something wrong. She raced to check on Ethan, the warmth of parental love blending with the chill of fear. Before she could wrap her mind around her unease, a single, ominous knock echoed through their home. Her heart plummeted as she opened the door. A police officer stood there, rain-soaked and urgent. "I'm searching for a suspicious character in the area," he said, but there was an unsettling grin stretching across his face. It felt wrong. A sickening thought crept into her mind. Was he even a real officer? Her instincts hissed, "Don't let him in. My son is inside," she murmured, her voice wavering with anxiety. Turning her head, she realized Ethan had wandered down the hallway, almost disappearing into shadow. "Ethan," she called, but the silence that followed was a sinister void. Panic slid down her spine as she heard a soft, chilling whisper emanating from deeper within the house. "He shouldn't be alone." Lucy shot her gaze back to the officer. His smile widened as he inched forward, his figure almost blending into the dark. She darted away, fear gripping her heart as she searched frantically for Ethan. As her trembling hands clutched the walls, she stumbled onto a door, hidden in the basement, ajar and beckoning. The shadows behind it felt alive, almost mocking her trembling resolve. Lightning flashed, revealing grotesque symbols painted on the walls, ritualistic markings from stories whispered in the depths of her childhood. A bile of dread rose as she remembered the tales of missing children, horror stories passed between neighbors during summer nights. Before she could comprehend the implications, another knock pounded at the door, urgent and relentless, causing her blood to run cold. "Who is it?" she shouted, fear knotting her insides. Her phone buzzed violently on the counter messages of frantic urgency she hadn't noticed. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As her instincts screamed at her to run, Lucia's skin prickled. A movement flickered in the corner of her eye. Shadows twisted, dancing in the corners, and just when she thought she could approach the door safely, panic turned her blood to ice. The pitch-black hallway loomed, Ethan's frightened face nowhere in sight. The sinister night had only just begun. What unspeakable terror awaited in the recesses of her own home? Heart pounding, Lucy's breath caught in her throat. She stood frozen for a moment, the darkness of the corridor stretching out before her like a chasm waiting to swallow her whole. "Ethan!" she screamed again, desperation seeping into every syllable. The oppressive silence mocked her, and she felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on her. The knock at the door came again, more insistent this time. Her instincts screamed at her not to turn her back on the stranger outside, but the fear of losing Ethan broke the spell of terror gripping her. She dashed toward the hallway, glancing back only once. The officer, his grin wide and sickening, still loomed outside, unmoving, as if he was waiting for her to make a choice. "Stay here," she whispered hastily to the shadows, knowing full well the futility of the words. The darkness was so thick it felt like tendrils reaching for her, pulling her deeper into its embrace. An icy draft curled around her ankles as she stepped into the fissured light of the hallway. The old wood creaked underfoot, amplifying the tension that coiled in her stomach. "Ethan," she croaked, voice trembling at the edges. She turned a corner, her heart racing, only to find the hallway leading to a darkened door at the end, its surface marred with deep lines, as if something had clawed at it repeatedly. "Mommy!" A cry, soft yet filled with terror, drifted from behind the door. Relief surged within her chest but was almost instantly strangled by dread. Ethan's voice pulled her closer, each step feeling like she was wading through thick mud. She reached out, her fingers trembling as they brushed the doorknob. It felt icy, almost as if the door had been waiting for her. With a steadying breath, she turned it slowly, anticipation curling in her gut. The door creaked open, revealing a dim room filled with shadows, and there, in the corner, was Ethan, his wide eyes glistening with tears, his small form curled against the wall. Lucy stepped forward, stretching out her arms. "Ethan, baby, I'm here," she whispered, fighting back the swelling panic. But as she reached him, a chill swept over her. The air was thick, heavy with a stench she couldn't place, like rotting leaves and something darker, more foreboding. "Mommy," he whimpered again, glancing over her shoulder, eyes widening with horror. "Yes, behind you." The words shivered through Lucy. The tension in her spine snapped straight as she swung around, but no one was there. The hallway was empty, yet the feeling of being watched crawled over her skin. She pressed her back against the wall, heart racing like a caged animal, and grabbed Ethan's small hand tightly. "Let us get out of here now," she ordered, pulling him to his feet. They stumbled into the hallway, but it felt different, twisted. The shadows around them seemed to pulse, breathing like a living thing. With every step they took, the air grew colder, clinging to them like fog. Then she heard it, a low chuckle, soft and grating. Her blood ran cold as she felt a sense of wrongness coil around her. A figure slowly emerged from the shadowy depths, revealing itself to be the officer, dripping wet, his eyes sparkling with something sinister. "You shouldn't be scared of the dark," he said, voice smooth and hypnotic, as if entrancing. "Run, Ethan," Lucy screamed, shoving her son ahead of her. They bolted toward the front door, but it was closed tight, the handle refusing to turn even under her frantic grip. The walls tightened in around them, closing off any chance of escape. "What's happening?" Ethan cried, pulling her arm, panic spilling from his eyes. The officer's chuckle deepened. "You should have let me help you. Now you belong to the night." A freezing darkness enveloped them, and Lucy felt her vision narrowing, the shadows flowing like a tide, pulling her down. But as her vision blurred, she caught a glimpse, a flash of white running through the corner of her eye. Something was lurking nearby, waiting for a chance to pounce. And then, everything went black. What had she awakened? What awaited them in the murky depths of night? A cold, suffocating silence blanketed Lucy as she tumbled into the chasm of darkness. No sound stirred, not even Ethan's frightened whimpers. Everything went silent, except for the thick thud of her heart echoing in her ears. Time had no meaning. Seconds felt like hours. She tried to scream, but the words turned to ash in her throat. Something in instinct told her to move, but her limbs felt heavy, as if shackled by the very shadows that surrounded her. She couldn't see her son, but she could feel his small hand still tightly clutched in hers. "Ethan," she breathed, fighting against the panic. "Can you hear me?" His grip tightened, but he didn't respond. The darkness pulsed around them, enveloping her with a weight that was more than just air. It felt alive, coiling around her like a serpent, squeezing tighter with each breath she took. "Mommy," Ethan's voice finally sliced through the gloom, trembling and small. "I'm scared." "Me too, honey, but we need to stay together. Focus on my voice." Suddenly the shadows shifted, A soft rustling interrupted the stillness, and Lucy froze, straining her ears. Something was moving towards them, slithering, almost. Her skin prickled with cold sweat as dread spilled over her like icy water. "Mommy!" Ethan cried again. A note of pure terror laced through his words. "It's getting closer." A glimmer of movement caught Lucy's eye, that flash of white again. It darted swiftly across the far wall like a wisp of light in the void. She squinted, desperately trying to discern what it was. Her pulse quickened, and she instinctively pulled Ethan closer. "Stay behind me," she whispered, regret settling in as she felt the weight of the darkness grow heavier around them. The rustling stirred again, now almost like a whispering voice, low and raspy, filling the air with a sickly sweetness. "Lucy," it crooned her name, slithering through the air. Her stomach turned. There was a sinister familiarity in the voice that made her skin crawl, as if she had heard it echoing through her dreams. "Who are you?" she shouted, though deep down she dreaded an answer. "It's just us, sweet Lucy." The officer's voice emerged from the shadows, now swirling around them. "You called me back. You didn't think you could escape, did you? You've awoken more than just the night." The sound of his voice made her heart race. She couldn't turn around, but the swagger of his presence filled the air like a storm brewing. "What do you want from us?" The question tasted bitter on her tongue. "I want you to taste what fear feels like." He laughed softly, and the shadows danced hungrily around him. "And your son will make the perfect appetizer." With that, the darkness erupted, swirling around them, pulling at their very essence. She squeezed Ethan's hand tightly, but the shadows rippled, threatening to break them apart. "Don't let go, Ethan. We can fight this," Lucy urged. But something shifted in the shadows, and suddenly, it started to feel clearer. The walls, once tightening around them, began to shift, revealing untamed sights hidden just beyond reach. Images twisted through the air, a series of grotesque faces, twisted limbs, and grotesque smiles danced in the darkness. Ethan whimpered again, his voice quivering, filled with pure disbelief. She peered into the madness that surrounded them, realizing they were no longer alone. Forms began to materialize from the dense blackness, figures with hollow eyes, limbs that seemed to writhe in agony, whispered echoes of lost souls. The shadows were hungry and they were closing in. Just as a pointed set of fingers reached for Ethan, Lucy instinctively pulled him toward the flicker of white she had seen earlier, now glimmering like a beacon amid the chaos. "This way, Ethan." But as they raced toward the light, she could feel the shadows latching on, sucking at them like a vacuum. Panic surged through her. What is it they wanted? And then something sharp pierced through her mind, whispering in the darkness, "What have you awakened?" As they dove deeper toward that flicker, she sensed it, a truth lurking, waiting just beyond the edge of the light, something ancient, dark, and unspeakably evil. Would they reach the light, or would the shadows consume them whole? Lucy's heart raced, and she felt the pull of the dark tightening around her like a noose. There was no turning back now. The flicker grew brighter as Lucy and Ethan pushed through the thick blanket of shadows. It shimmered like a promise, urging them onward. Just one more step. She could feel the cold grasping behind them, the touch of hands brushing against her back, desperate to drag them into oblivion. "Run!" she cried, her voice a raw whip of urgency. But the moment they lunged toward the light, it flickered, wavering like a dying star. Was it fading? Lucy's heart sank. In a moment of sheer panic, she stumbled, her breath hitching till it felt like she was choking on her own dread. "Mommy!" Ethan's small hands gripped her tighter, his body shaking. Another idiotic laugh reverberated through the dark, sending icy fingers down Lucy's spine. "You think you can escape? You've angered them, sweet Lucy. This is what happens when you venture too far." A flash of shadows darted past them, panic-stricken faces, mouths wide in silent screams. Was this what awaited her? Was every soul here once alive, just as she was? She couldn't dwell on that now. "Ethan." She yanked him to her, but as she did, her foot caught on something in the blackness, sending her sprawling. The ground felt soft and pulsed beneath her, like a heart beating under her weight. Ethan fell, his hand slipping from hers. Ethan. The sheer terror in her voice made her stomach churn. She scrambled to her feet and lunged for him, her heart racing. But time stretched in the dark. Mere moments turned to hours. A claw-like shadow stretched toward Ethan, fingers wreathed in darkness, twining around his tiny wrists. He squirmed, terror plastered across his face. "Mommy! Help!" Lucy's limbs felt heavy, the weight of the shadows pressing down on her, threatening to pull her back. "Hold on, sweetheart," she roared, forcing herself to push against the oppressive hug the dark wrapped around her. But the shadows began to weave stories into the air, tales of despair and betrayal. Each word whispered through the wind, laced with anguish and longing, claws of guilt digging into her very soul. "You brought him here, you drew him closer, no. I didn't." She shouted, feeling the hate wash over her like poison. "I just wanted him safe. I didn't mean." The darkness shrieked, and with it came a whirlwind of memories, faces flashing before her eyes, friends, family, people she had loved and lost. The weight settled in her chest, shackling her heart. Ethan. Diving once more, she felt a fire igniting within her, sheer willpower roaring to life. With every ounce of strength, she pulled on the tether of love that tied them together. It was there, just beneath the shadows, and it was rising. As she raced through the darkness, the space around her began to morph and twist. No longer just shadows, they became figures, monstrous and vile. The whispering faces echoed her failures, her regrets. With each ghostly visage, she felt claws sinking deeper into her consciousness. "Mommy, I can't hold on." Ethan's voice, now faint, pierced through the clamor of her thoughts. "No," she cried, lunging one last time. In that instant, she didn't see the darkness. She saw a glimmer of her son, a part of her heart she would do anything to keep safe. With all her strength, she tore free of the shadows, plunging toward him. She felt the pull of the dark dragging at her ankles, but love surged, and she grasped for Ethan, pulling him toward her chest as if to shield him from the malevolent air. The light flickered again, brighter now. But was it hope, or a trap? "Close your eyes, Ethan." And for the first time, she noticed something beneath the flicker, something dark and twisted lurking just outside the beam. It started to ripple, to morph, coiling like a snake about to strike. The various forms of loss appeared again, only now. They loomed even closer, and their whispers became a chorus, chanting a single horrifying truth. "Lucy, you can never hide." Lucy clutched Ethan tighter, her breath quickening. As darkness threatened to engulf them once more, the realization hit her hard. What if facing this evil was the only way to truly escape it? The shadows surged, hungry, angry, wanting more from them. With a defiant scream, she raced toward the heart of the light, but the shadows snapped at her heels, pulling her back violently, threatening to shatter the thin barrier between them. Would they reclaim the light, or would they become just another lost echo in the darkness? A twisted smile crept across Lucius' lips, suddenly alight with a fierce flame of determination. They wouldn't just escape. They would fight. But in doing so, what would she awaken? And at what cost? The shadows writhed, pulsing around them like a living organism hungry for release. Lucius' breath quickened, the air thickening with dread. She needed to move, to act. As fear coursed through her veins, the flickering light remained their only beacon of hope. "Ethan, hold on tight," she shouted, her voice swallowed by the deafening whispers clawing at her mind. The warmth of his small body brought her a moment of solace. But it wouldn't last. The light flickered dangerously, silhouettes rising from the ground like they had emerged from the very earth itself. Faces twisted in torment stared back at her, their eyes hollow and pleading. "Join us, Lucy," they crooned, their voices a chilling harmony, tender yet menacing. "No, I want tea," she yelled, shaking her head violently as if to scatter their words like leaves in the wind. She could feel Ethan trembling beside her, his small body quaking with fear. Suddenly, a deep rumble echoed through the darkness. The ground trembled beneath her feet, and the shadows surged forward like a tidal wave. Lucy barely had time to think before she felt a cold mist coil around their ankles, dragging her closer to the void. This isn't real, she told herself, the mantra offering little comfort as she glimpsed the despair in Ethan's eyes. It's just a trick. Gripping him tighter, she pushed against the pull, moving them both toward the light. As they fought through the encroaching darkness, a piercing shriek erupted from behind them. It was a sound born of pure agony, vibrating through the ground and rattling Lucy's bones. The shadows twisted angrily, lashing out at her like whips. "Stop!" she shrieked, the weight of her past crashing over her like a tidal wave. Faces loomed larger, people she had failed, moments she couldn't erase. Every regret was a sharp knife digging deeper into her already wounded heart. Just as she felt they were about to be consumed, a flicker of the light surged brighter again. But Lucy knew better than to trust it. "We're not running," she declared, her voice steadying, emboldened by the terror surrounding them. "We're fighting. We can't let them take you. Mommy, what do we do?" Ethan's voice was a quiet tremor that shattered her resolve, and the lack of faith in his words made anger rise within her. "Look into my eyes, Ethan. I'm here. We'll fight this together." She focused on his face, forcing him to see her as a fortress against the storm, as the darkness pressed closer. With a newfound strength, Lucy called upon every ounce of determination within her. She stepped forward, her heart thrumming with adrenaline. "We will not surrender," she shouted defiantly, lifting Ethan higher against her chest. The ground beneath them shook more violently now, cracking and bubbling as if the very heart of their world was being unleashed. The shadows, inflamed by her defiance, began to warp and twist, their fingers retreating slightly. But then, the darkness seemed to howl in fury. Whispers turned into a cacophony of rage, each voice threading through the air with a sharpness that made Lucy's skin crawl. "You will regret this, Lucy," they screeched, their promises of vengeance clawing at her resolve. Above the roiling darkness, the light shimmered once more dazzling than before. Lucy's heart pounded in her chest. They had to move, but the battle was just beginning. With Ethan still held tight, she plunged toward the light, hoping it would save them. But every step felt like a plunge into fire, a weight pressing down on her soul, and the darkness screamed threats of what lay just beyond the reach of hope. "Mommy, I see them. They're coming," Ethan cried, his voice frantic and trembling. "Then we'll be ready," she shouted back, her heart racing. The light loomed larger now, almost blinding. What lay ahead could only mean freedom or ruin. But as they collided with the heart of the brightness, the shadows writhed one last time, gathering power for a final strike that would shake the very foundation of their fight. With a final breath, she braced herself, grounding Ethan in front of her. What awaited them? On the other side, would it be the salvation they sought, or would the horrors that haunted them follow? "Lucy the monsters," Ethan's voice trembled, pulling her attention back to the swirling darkness behind them, narrowing like a vortex, eager to reclaim its own. And in that moment, she realized, the true fight was just beginning. The moment they crossed into the brilliant light, everything shifted. Lucy gasped as a surge of warmth enveloped them, wrapping around like a lover's embrace. Dimly, she could hear Ethan's breathing quick, ragged, mirroring her own frantic heartbeat. But the comfort of light twisted quickly, like a soft melody morphing into a harsh scream. They stood on a narrow bridge, suspended over an abyss that hummed with a low, unsettling discord. The light shimmered, casting long shadows that danced, flickering like candle flames caught in a gust. Below, a maw of darkness churned, seething as it eagerly awaited their misstep. Ethan clutched her hand tighter, his knuckles white, eyes wide with terror. "Where are we, Mommy?" His voice trembled, a thread of innocence threaded through desperation. "I don't know," Lucy admitted, fear clawing at her throat. "But we need to keep moving." Just as she spoke, a rustling came from behind them. The shadows coiled again, rising like smoke, filling the air with a foul stench, a mix of decay and something metallic. The murmurs returned, louder now, mocking her bravery. "You think you're safe here, Lucy?" they hissed, You have traded one darkness for another. Shut up, she shouted, fury igniting her emotions. With every ounce of willpower, Lucy stepped forward, pulling Ethan with her. But as they moved, something invisible tugged at the back of her mind, a gnawing sense of wrongness. The bridge stretched endlessly. With each step, the shadows closed in, filling the corners of her vision. They didn't just threaten. They whispered. Remember them, your failures, your regrets. Faces flared behind her eyes. Her mother's disappointed glance. Friends she left behind. The sharper the memories, the closer the shadows came. Mommy! Ethan's voice was a piercing shriek, pulling her back from the brink of memory. What is it, sweetie? She turned to him, seeing his wide eyes fixed on something past her shoulder, freezing the blood in her veins. Look, Lucy spun around. From the swirling darkness, pale fingers reached toward them, gnarled and twisted, with nails longer and sharper than knives. They were not just shadows. They were something far worse, an embodiment of her fears. Join us, a voice hissed from the deep. We welcome you home. No, we want tea. Lucy screamed, forcing her legs to move again. Keep going, Ethan. She felt her heart pounding against her ribcage. The bridge seemed brittle, threatening to collapse under their weight if they didn't reach the end soon. The pull of the shadows was overwhelming, a frigid dread crawling over her skin. She could almost feel the chill wrapping around her like chains. A burst of light flickered at the end, a beacon she held onto with a desperation that was primal. As they neared the edge, the shadows belched out a guttural roar. Lucy glanced back, and a fresh wave of terror crashed over her. Faces formed from the darkness, familiar, pleading, and twisted in anguish. The faces were hers, altered with torment, as if they were the living embodiment of every regret she had buried within. Turn back, Lucy. You cannot escape your destiny, they wailed, a haunting chorus that drove nails into her psyche. But she refused to relent. We can do this, Ethan. Just a little more. Tears blurred her vision, yet her grip on him tightened, their survival hinging on her next steps. With every ounce of will, they reached the light. It was blinding, a scorching sun against the suffocating darkness. But as Lucy and Ethan stepped out, the shadows roared again, a sound punctuated by a final, fierce scream echoing through the void as they crossed into the light. A shocking truth lingered in the air, a lingering hint of possibilities around them, like a shadow that wouldn't fade. Ethan gasped, his small body shaking. Mommy, where are we? A question soaked in dread. Only time will tell, Lucy breathed, eyes scanning their new surroundings, where the light began to dim into a chilling gray, uncertain and foreboding. In the distance, the shadows still whispered, plotting their next move. And Lucy could feel deep in her bones that their fight wasn't over. Would they find safety, or was this another trick of the darkness? What do you see ahead, Lucy? Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The shadows danced again, and Lucy felt the weight of their gaze, closing in from all sides. I see a choice, she murmured, fear crawling back up her spine. The darkness stirred. What awaited them next could change everything, or destroy them completely. The air thickened, the gray light wrapping itself around them like creeping fog. Each step forward felt heavier, as if the very ground beneath them was soaked with dread. Lucy glanced at Ethan, his face pale, wide eyes reflecting the swirling shadows whispering around them. Stay close, okay? She whispered, forcing a tremor from her voice. Her pulse quickened, a steady drum in a landscape of chaos. As they moved, the chilling silence hung heavy between them, a silence that screamed more than echoes ever could. Ahead, the path twisted and turned, fading into a darkness that should have been impossible in the fading light. Do you think we're safe? Ethan asked, his voice catching like a fragile thread. Lucy felt the ground tremble slightly beneath their feet, stoking the already burning fear in her gut. I don't know, but we have to keep going. Rounding the bend, they stumbled into a clearing, the glowing remnants of the bridge behind them eclipsed by towering trees, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The whispers intensified. You are lost, you can't go back. No, she spat defiantly, We won't fall for your lies. But even as she spoke, doubt clawed at her. What if this was worse than before? The very thought sent icy fingers up her spine. Ethan flinched, pointing towards a dilapidated structure emerging from the dark. A crumbling cottage that leaned precariously to one side, its windows dark and lifeless. Lucy hesitated. The air seemed to crackle with anticipation, drawing her toward the malevolent structure. "Mommy, we can't go in there." Ethan's voice quivered, panic sharp against her hearing. Maybe it's a way out, but even she didn't believe it. Footsteps echoed from within the cottage, a slow creaking that sounded almost like laughter, warped and twisted. Lucy's instincts screamed at her to turn back, but the shadowy tendrils tugging at her mind felt too heavy. "We need shelter, Ethan. Just for a moment." As they crept toward the door, it swung open with a groan, revealing darkness that seemed to swallow the light around them. The scent of must and decay wafted out, almost inviting yet bitterly pungent. "Mommy, don't." Ethan pulled back, resistance flooding his tiny body. But Lucy felt an undeniable pull, as if the very walls called to her whispering dark promises. Inside, the air was stale. Dust motes danced, illuminated sporadically by the last waning light. A shiver coursed through her. "Stay close," she urged again, but it sounded weak even to her ears. They wandered further inside, every creak of the floorboards sounding ominously loud. Shadows flickered just beyond their reach, writhing like snakes. "Look," Ethan cried, pointing toward a cracked mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. Lucy approached, her heart pounding against her ribcage as she peered into the glass. The reflection showed not just herself but Ethan, but also shadows peering back in, eyes glinting and laughing. She recoiled, stumbling back. "Ethan, don't look." "What's wrong, Mommy?" His innocent question pierced through the building dread that filled the room. "Just don't look," she managed, every instinct screaming that whatever lingered within that mirror was not meant for them. "They want you to see, to remember," a voice whispered, both sweet and sinister. It echoed from the walls, wrapping around her mind. "No." She turned, frantically pulling Ethan along. "We have to leave. Now." The darkness thickened, as if refusing to let them escape. Footsteps echoed louder, seemingly positioned right behind them, moving closer, always closer. "Mommy, I'm scared," Ethan cried, the terror seeping into his voice. Lucy dove for the door, heart racing. As they burst outside, the air slapped against them like a cold wave. The whispering shadows followed, forming into vague figures, barbed tendrils reaching for Ethan. "Run," she screamed, and they fled into the night, the sound of their pounding feet echoing louder than their ragged breaths. But even as they raced away, the darkness snickered, a sinister promise hanging in the air behind them. "You can't escape. You are ours." The chill of the trees surrounded them, but as they pressed forward, Lucy could feel something sinister watching, waiting, plotting their return. "Mommy, are we safe?" As Lucy turned to reassure him, the ground shook beneath them. They weren't out of danger yet, not by a long shot. "Not yet, Ethan. But we will be if we just keep moving." But as she spoke, the ground split beneath their feet, and the shadows surged around them once again. What awaited them at the bottom could be far worse than where they had just fled. Would they find a way out, or would the darkness finally claim what belonged to it? The ground crumbled under their feet, plunging Lucy and Ethan into a cold abyss. The world above faded into muted chaos, replaced by a heavy silence. Every instinct told her they were descending into something far more sinister. Lucy wrapped her arms around Ethan as they fell, holding him tightly against the fear that threatened to engulf them both. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and somewhere below, shadows swirled, their contours impossibly fluid. It felt as though dark hands clawed at their souls, yearning to pull them deeper. They landed hard, the impact knocking the breath from Lucy's lungs. Dazed, she lifted her head, her vision blurred, and blinked against the darkness. "Ethan," she called out, panic rising in her throat as she sat up. He was there, right beside her, wide-eyed and trembling. Where are we?" Ethan whimpered, his voice cracking. I don't know, she said, scanning their surroundings. Faint wisps of gray drifted before their eyes, coiling like smoke. The air tasted damp and cold, a bitter reminder of where they had just escaped. The shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, a persistent reminder of the terror lurking just out of sight. We need to find a way out, she whispered, though her heart was heavy with dread. Stay close to me. They slowly picked their way through the darkness, stumbling occasionally over unseen obstacles. Each soft thud resonated against the thick silence, amplifying the sense of impending doom. The shadows silently mocked their intrusion, whispering twisted tales of despair and haunting nightmares. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted an unsteady jolt that staggered Lucy. She grabbed Ethan's shoulder to steady him. Then, from the oppressive dark, a low, horrible groan echoed, reverberating against the walls of their prison. The noise swelled and fell like the breathing of some ancient beast, sending vibrations through the cold air. Mommy, I don't like it here, Ethan shivered, looking up at her with all the faith a child could muster. Me either, buddy, she replied, her voice barely escaping her lips. She squeezed his hand tightly. We'll find a way. Just keep moving. They ventured deeper into the shadows, and the dense fog began to swirl with a slight glow. Lucy hurried towards it, praying it was a way out. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being meticulously watched as they crossed into the light. They were met with a shocking revelation. A dimly lit room cluttered with dusty remnants, a child's room. The walls were painted in cheerful colors, adorned with faded drawings, but the air was thick with sorrow. What happened here? She murmured, stepping into the room. Suddenly, a chill ran down her spine, and her skin prickled with fear. The shadows pulsed at the periphery, growing restless as if awakening from a long slumber. A small, cardboard box sat in the corner, decorated with stars and cartoon characters, impossibly out of place. A compulsion to open it surged within her, against her better judgment. What's in there, Mommy? Ethan asked, but it was less a question than a strained longing for safety. I don't know, she breathed, fingers inching toward the box. Just as she reached for it, the room shifted, walls trembling, the glow flickering ominously. Don't touch it, came a voice, deep and despairing, echoing from the very walls. They are looking for you. Lucy froze, fear coursing through her veins like ice. She looked around, but the source of the voice remained hidden in the throbbing shadows. The ground beneath them rattled once more, darkness rushing in like a flood. Mommy! Ethan screamed, clutching at her with wide-eyed terror. They skirted around the box, fleeing from the suffocating weight that threatened to crush them. Lucy could feel the shadows reaching, searching for her child. A singular thought consumed her: survival. But as they reached the small door on the far side of the room, it slammed shut with a deafening crash. The chilling laughter that erupted from the shadows echoed in her ears, growing louder and more menacing. Get out! Get out! Lucy shouted as panic clawed at her throat. Ethan began to cry, his voice drowning in the malevolence that swirled about them. And just as Lucy prepared to fight against the dread, the walls closed in, whispering secrets that sent them both to their knees. Do you hear them? The shadows hissed. You belong with us forever. The door before them exploded with darkness, sucking them in, and it all went black. Mommy! As Lucy plunged deeper into the abyss, a terrifying thought pierced through the thick fog. What if escape was never an option? What could possibly await them if they fell into darkness once more? A suffocating darkness wrapped around Lucy and Ethan, pressing in on every side. Lucy fought against the weight, clawing for clarity in the void. Splintered thoughts raced through her mind. Where were they now? Were they still falling? Or had they landed somewhere worse? She gasped as a sharp chill pierced the air, a dagger of ice against her skin. A rustling noise startled her, followed by a soft whimper from Ethan. She scrambled to her feet, forcing herself to focus. Ethan, are you okay? She called, panic lacing her voice. I think so, he replied, his tiny voice trembling. Stay close, she urged, gripping his hand tighter. around them, the gloom seemed to huddle, waiting. It was unmistakable something was watching. Lucy's heart raced as she squinted into the inky blackness, but there was nothing tangible to confront. Yet something sinister surely lurked just beyond the reach of the dim light. "Where are we?" Ethan asked, tugging at her sleeve. "I can't tell. But we'll find a way out," Lucy reassured him, though her voice quavered. They wandered forward, drawn by muted, echoing sounds that bounced eerily off unseen walls. It felt less like exploring and more like being led to an inevitable execution. A cold shiver swept through her, and she tried to repress the deep-seated fear clawing at her throat. Seconds felt like hours as they moved, and their breaths mingled, heavy and unsteady in the oppressive stillness. Then suddenly Ethan stopped. "Mommy!" he gasped, his eyes wide with alarm. Lucy turned, following his terrified gaze. A shape materialized from the dark, a looming shadow, darker than the surrounding blackness, and almost human in shape. Its outline twisted grotesquely, stretching and retracting as though it was breathing. "Run!" Lucy shouted, instinct taking over. They tore down the corridor, the creature behind them letting out a screech that echoed with the sound of breaking glass. The world around them morphed, cave-like walls giving way to a strange tunnel lit by flickering bulbs twisted in rusted fixtures. Dust motes moved like phantoms in the weak light, swirling around them as they sprinted. The air thickened, pressing against Lucy as she pushed Ethan ahead of her. "Keep going," she yelled, feeling a twinge of fear as the creature's screeches reverberated off the walls. They stumbled into another room, this one sprawling and wide. A cruel brightness engulfed them, pouring in from an overhead glass dome that illuminated the dust swirling like trapped spirits. Old toys littered the ground, broken dolls, toy cars, their lifeless forms whispering hidden horrors. Lucy's breath hitched. "Is this a playground?" she wondered aloud, chest tightening as the familiarity of it clawed at her mind. Yet it was not innocent. The remnants were soaked in despair. "Mommy?" Ethan's voice broke her trance. "Are we safe here?" Lucy scanned their surroundings, suddenly acutely aware of the shadows creeping along the walls, warping into terrifying shapes with malicious intent. "No, we can't stay here." As they turned to find an exit, the glass dome overhead shattered. Glinting shards rained down, falling sharply like knives. Lucy shoved Ethan aside, covering him with her body as the debris littered the ground, the sharp implications underscoring their vulnerability. Just as quickly, an all-encompassing darkness swallowed the room anew, closing in and swirling into a vortex of despair. Lucy felt the weight of countless eyes watching, a chilling amalgamation of grief and madness weighing down on them with a presence more potent than any corporeal body. "Mommy, make it stop," Ethan whimpered, pressing against her. "I can't, sweetie," she cried, her heart hammering in rhythms of terror. "We have to keep moving." But with every step taken, the shadows seemed to congeal around them tighter, a malevolent force suffocating every hope of escape. "Help us," a voice echoed, soft yet piercing the heavy silence. "Please." Lucy turned toward the sound, heart racing. "Who's there?" she called, vulnerability punctuating her voice. But no answer came, just the ever-growing silence, thick with tension. And then she felt it. The shadows stirring with renewed hunger, swirling around Ethan with insatiable rage. "Mommy!" Ethan cried out as shadows lunged toward him, their claw-like tendrils inescapable. In that moment of horror, Lucy realized they were not alone. A bizarre figure lurked just beyond the shadows. Lurking there, mouth stretched into a wide, unnatural grin. What had they awakened? What terrible secret awaited them in the darkness? Desperation surged within Lucy. They would not surrender. Not now. But escape felt like a cruel mirage. "Ethan, run to the door," she shouted, pushing him ahead. But as he dashed, the shadows coalesced, blocking his path. Lucy's heart stopped. "Ethan, come back!" Suddenly, the shadows roared in fury, and all she could do was scream as the darkness swallowed both her and her son whole. All she could think was how the darkness had never really been asleep. What unthinkable truth would they face next? Sinking deeper into despair, Lucy gasped as she and Ethan were thrust back into consciousness, the shadows engulfing them like a wave, drowning out all remnants of light. Panic sliced through her, but deep within the swirling void, something shifted, a sense of clarity emerging from the chaos. "We're not lost yet," she whispered fiercely, holding onto Ethan's hand like a lifeline, desperately willing herself to defy the dark forces. The chaotic whispers crescendoed around them, a cacophony of anguished voices urging them to despair. But Lucy would not succumb, not when her son needed her the most. "Stay by my side," she told Ethan, her voice steady amidst the turmoil. It was a beacon of hope she desperately needed to relight an assurance that love could still triumph over the shadows. The darkness twisted and beckoned, sending shimmering tendrils toward them, but Lucy's resolve only deepened. "Whatever you are, you will not take him," she shouted into the abyss, her voice echoing with defiance. In response, the shadows surged forward, a pulsating mass eager to drown them in despair. It felt as though a great beast loomed just out of sight, its breath chilling their skin. "This is your home now," the voices cooed, seductive and comforting. "Join us." "Lucy, no," she cried, squeezing Ethan's hand tighter. "This isn't my home." There was a flicker of movement beyond the overwhelming darkness, a glimmer of light beckoning from somewhere deep in the void, pulsed like a heartbeat, quickening her own. "Ethan, can you see that?" She pointed toward the light, pushing through the darkness with renewed determination. Together, they stepped toward it, the pull of the shadows behind them a terrible reminder of what they were leaving. "Stay close," she urged, feeling the pull of the darkness growing fainter as they moved. The shadows writhed angrily, hissing threats that echoed against the walls of her mind. "You think you can escape? You will always be ours." But as they marched forward, the tendrils recoiled from the light, their whispers turning to frustrated howls. She could feel it, the darkness was losing its grip. "Mommy, I'm scared." Ethan's voice trembled, but Lucy turned to him, forcing a smile that enveloped her heart in warmth. "Together we're stronger. Just a little further." Light engulfed them, bright and warm, whisking away the granules of fear embedded within her. It stitched hope back into the frayed edges of her reality, and she felt the shadows hold finally weaken. They burst forth into an open space. Breathing in the fresh air, Lucy shielded her eyes momentarily from the blinding brightness. They were no longer in the darkness. They had emerged into a clearing flanked with trees, their leaves shimmering like jewels under a golden sun. Ethan gasped, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and confusion. "Are we safe, Mommy?" Lucy knelt beside him, brushing back his hair tenderly. "I think so, baby. We did it, we fought back." But just as relief washed over her, a chilling laugh echoed from the edges of the trees, sending shivers down her spine. The shadows were still present, lurking just beyond reach, plotting their return. "Listen, Lucy," came a voice, deep and familiar. It was the officer, his voice coated in honeyed malice. "You think you're free? There are doors to the darkness hidden everywhere. You'll never escape what you've awakened." In that moment, realization washed over Lucy like a cold wave. The battle was far from over. They had won the skirmish, but the war raged on. "Not if we face it together," she declared resolutely, clutching Ethan to her chest. In this moment of fleeting safety, she understood her mission. "Then let us end this," she whispered, gazing at the trees where shadows swirled hungrily, waiting for them to falter. Taking a deep breath, a flicker of determination ignited within her. They would not only survive, they would conquer the darkness. Every ounce of courage surged within her, and side by side with Ethan, they would unleash their defiance against the very essence of fear. Together, with hearts pounding and hands clasped tight, they stepped forward, ready to face whatever horrors awaited them in the shadows, armed with love, their most potent weapon against the darkness that threatened to consume them whole. But as they advanced, filled with renewed strength, Lucy knew the unknown loomed close. She refused to let fear win. After all, she was armed not with just hope, but with the heart of a mother willing to fight for her child. In that moment, their fate entwined through the fabric of light and shadow, Lucy silently made a promise to herself. They would find their way home. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And if you care at all, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your loyalty to the channel. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.